names, numbers, email addresses and dates of birth.
More than 2 million customers at online shopping platform MyDeal have become the latest victims of a major data breach.
Australia's largest supermarket company, Woolworths, have been in contact with its 2.2 million clients from the MyDeal online marketplace, whose data has been accessed by an unauthorised person using compromised credentials. 1.2 million of the 2.2 million people who are thought to have been impacted have just had their email addresses revealed. Additionally, names, phone numbers, delivery locations, and certain customers' birth dates are among the leaked data. MyDeal does not keep payment details, driver's license or passport numbers on file. And according to Woolworths, neither customer account passwords nor payment information have ever been hacked. The breach took place within the MyDeal CRM. No Woolworths Group customers or Everyday Reward Program members' information has been stolen because MyDeal operates on a different platform from the primary platform used by Woolworths. So what is the deal? What kind of impact does the difference in CRMs and platforms have on the severity of the breach?
Joining me today is Sean Duca from Palo Alto Networks. It's wonderful to have you back on the show again, Sean. Thanks for joining. And Wayne Williamson from Equifax Australia.
Thank you.
So, another Australian breach. So, Sean, what are your thoughts? What's happening in the space? And then we'll cut over to Wayne.
Look, I think it's just yet another sort of example of, every organisation needs to think about what type of information they actually hold, how they're actually sort of protecting it, who's got access to it, and then at the same time make sure that you're actually you're going through the process that it's a foreseeable event that someone's going to try and target your own organisation.
Sure.
You are holding some sort of information of value there, and think about what's the best way to actually protect it. And I think that really comes down to being prepared for an inevitable cyber incident from taking place.
Wayne?
Yeah, I'd agree. In this instance, it looks like there was a good viewpoint in understanding what the data was. It looks like there was a good understanding of around their resiliency and their response mechanisms into that as well. And that would have come from testing and understanding what they need to do, what the issue is, and then probably some good crisis training into that as well.
So I want to sort of focus on trust. Obviously there was, from my understanding, there was an M&A. MyDeal was acquired by Woolworths quite recently, and then all of this breach had happened. But what does that mean for trust? And I know that's really a hard question to answer, but I'm curious to know, what does this mean moving forward for Australians? Because we are a very trustworthy nation and we do respect our household brands, but what does this mean moving forward now?
I think it's probably just going to come down to a level of transparency. I think with everything, in order to sort of build trust, gain trust, or regain trust, it's going to come down to, what measures are we doing something different now? And I think the more that we can sort of articulate and explain that, I think is always going to tell a better story. If I think about how any organisation could sort of go through it, just explain what's going on. The more you keep on sort of covering things up, as an example, I'm not trying to say that there's any cover up here, but if you want to be transparent and open, I think that's always going to win and trump anything else, and probably a better way to regain trust.
Oh, look, I totally agree. I'm always a fan of transparency. If you look at it, we really should be having that at the organisational level. We should be able to put dashboards and viewpoints out there to make it aware that everyone, and I think to your point, can make their own risk-based decision on whether or not they want to actually use that supplier or vendor or put their data into those sort of areas and that as well. But we're lacking that, right? We're lacking a viewpoint of engaging. We're lacking a viewpoint of thinking we can't go out with these security aspects and those sorts of viewpoints. But the reality is, if we did, it'll shift the way that our security teams functions internally. Because we know that we're being watched. We know that there's transparency. We know that we can't look at a data log and go, I think that'll be all right. That won't be an issue. Right? Those sorts of things actually get the heightened focus, and that goes through the organisation.
So when a company comes out and says, okay, we've been breached, this is what we're doing, do you think it disarms customers then? Or do you think that they're still in the back of their mind a little bit frustrated, but of course, like you said, there's transparency there. We've come forward, we've said this is what we're doing. Is that the best approach? Or what do you sort of think? Of course, the transparency side of things, but you're still going to have frustrated customers regardless.
Yeah, look, I think you're always going to have frustrated customers because sometimes people don't understand what does it actually mean to them.
Sure.
And I think the more that we can sort of explain, this is an ongoing investigation, we're still looking at this. Because if you think about day one when someone comes forward to say they've been breached, or there's been some sort of a cyber incident that's taken place, unauthorised access, you start to think about it and go, okay, what does that actually mean? You don't have any information at that point. And
So do you think that's up, sorry to cut you off there, Sean, so do you think that that's up to the organisation to say, what does this mean for you as a customer? Because I think you're right. Like even, barbecues that I've been to recently, they're like, oh, I don't care if my stuff's been breached. Yep. They don't understand the severity of it.
Absolutely, and I think if you look at sort of any breach, it's going to be a case of information was taken, and then at that point, what does it mean to the individual? For someone stole my postcode, let's just say it was just my postcode.
Right.
What's the actual true impact? And I think sometimes people need to probably have that explained in a little bit more detail of what does that actually mean? What could someone do with that? And I think as information starts to come to light of was something accessed, you'll probably find that in a couple of weeks from now as an example. Give people time to understand that there is going to be that sort of journey that's actually out there. An organisation is doing anything and everything they possibly can during that process. And I think that's where we need to ensure that we're just being a little bit more open, transparent. We don't know what we don't know right now. And I think that's the best story. I think the other part to it also is, if you think about, breaches of old, let's say, many times it comes down to the best story is probably the way that someone handled, an incident as opposed to what actually took place.
So when you say handle the incident, like what do you deem as handling it good? Because everyone's got different there's a barometer of what other people think is good.
Yeah, so it's more a case of, what was their response? How did they actually go through? If I think about, a security vendor once upon a time actually got breached.
Right.
And they were so transparent and open to all of their customers, which were some of the largest government organisations around the world. But they provided this information as to this is what actually took place. And obviously there was a bit of a drip feed effect as well.
Sure.
As they started to work out what was going on, they shared information, and their response probably goes down as one of those textbook type of responses where you say, that's just what gold standard looks like. And I think that's where people will hold you to account as to how you've actually managed to respond, how you've helped your customers, how you've helped the industry. Because I think at the end of the day, that's the key part that people want to look at. It's not just simply, well, you've done nothing. It's like, well, you've done a lot. Because you're actually helping not only me, but you're helping everyone else that's around us.
So Wayne, I want to jump to you for a second. As a leader, as a CISO, one thing I've heard is people saying like we should share information, but then I think people are reticent perhaps because it's like, well, then it's their personal brand then on the line. They don't want to be the guy that was behind the cyber breach, and then what does that then mean for them moving forward? Because they've still got their family to take care of, and all. Like, would it prohibit them from getting a job? Like, what are all of these things? Because I get it from a let's share from an industry perspective, but what about as an individual? Do you have any thoughts on that?
Oh, definitely. So we always take, and from where we've been at, we've been in one of the largest breaches as well out of the US. But we take a very transparent, share what we can viewpoint. So doing that, there's a position on all of us to get out and share and engage and take everyone on the journey. Just what did we do? What did it mean for us? What was happening at Equifax at the point of time? And there's multiple things that you can learn from this, from engaging different communities. So if you're talking to a HR type community, it's the burnout of the individuals and going through these events, right? They're impactful. So you might be able to give the heads up into the internal business areas around that and saying, yeah, these people are going to be fatigued, they're going to be suffering. What do you do to protect them around that and nurture that? It could be at any other point the media training, as Sean was talking about earlier. It's how do you identify who to call out to, who's the best person to be engaging to, what is the right level of information to the audience that needs to have those parts and that as well. But personally, it's about just sharing. It's security apart from certain internal IP ranges and those sorts of things. We're all suffering and engaging and doing the same aspect. We all have very similar issues. I've been a CISO at 2 different organisations and same sort of things that we're working on. There's nothing that I've gone through and seen anything different into those sorts of points. So it just really shows that we can share, we can talk more, we can demonstrate what we're doing, we can say, look, I spent some time burning on this issue and I found this resolution and getting that across, so we save other people time and that as well.
Do you think as well that people forget that there are people that make up, for example, Equifax? Like you're a person in your role, like you're a human being. Do you think people forget that and therefore the level of empathy doesn't quite show through because maybe they don't know you personally, they don't know anything about you, so it's very easy to be quite malicious online and say things which are unfair. Do you think there's a bit of that in there, that people forget there are people behind organisations?
Oh, they definitely do. I definitely do, because they take the brand name and they forget that there's individuals that are supporting their families, paying mortgages, all those sorts of things underneath, and running end to end just to get these things covered, especially as you're going through a breach and that sort of stuff. The tiredness, and I think you can see it in some of the media outlets with some of the C-level executives that have been reporting on the breaches. You can see the fatigue that they're carrying through that. And yes, it's easy to blame, but they're there, they're trying to resolve, they're trying to communicate, they're trying to move forward. What do we need to do as a community to help them get to that forward position and get that information out?
Do you think that you're sort of damned if you do, you're damned if you don't? Like if you say too much, you're one thing. If you don't say enough, you're another thing. Like it's how do you find that equalizer? It's hard to balance.
I think that the key part is probably just stick to the core narrative, which is when the information comes available, provide that information. Saying something like no comment, I don't think is going to be appropriate.
Right.
But it's more a case of we don't actually know the information right now. And I think don't really sort of tie yourself to the media cycles, because the media is going to want some information. It's more a case of, do you have the information to share? If you don't share it. There's no point going down the argument of, let's say, attribution, because where is that going to go? Right. It's probably not going to really help you out either. So I think it's more a case of, as and when the information comes up, as we start to work through the investigation, we will provide that information. If you don't know what type of level of information was actually accessed or compromised or taken, then share that information. People need to sort of understand that it's like, this is all we know, and that's all they should really be sharing. Stick to what you actually do know, and let that sort of data tell the story.
So just lastly on that point, Sean, what I'm hearing from what you're saying is it's like how you frame it. So you shouldn't just say, oh, no comment. So it's like, oh, well, we actually don't know anything as of yet, but when we do know, we'll let you know, and it's going to come down to much to what you both said around media training. How do you frame that? Because you're going to be sort of under pressure at that point, and it's very easy to say, oh, we can't respond on it. But again, it's how you set up that conversation to instill confidence in customers.
And that's where I probably look at it. If you think, when you've actually chosen your team, let's just call it the incident response or the crisis management team, there's going to be someone that's going to be, let's say, the translator between the technical people who are the incident responders, right, and then the people that are going to translate that to the business. And in turn, they're probably the ones that are like managing the communications. That particular person should be, probably they may end up being separate from the actual spokesperson. Have that person sit there and just keep on asking the question, why? So when you've got the spokesperson say, this is actually what has taken place, and it's not the prepared statement type of thing, it's more, they're going to stand there and someone's going to keep on asking them, why? They've got to feel comfortable that they don't actually know the information.
Right.
And just keep on sort of practicing and rehearsing that. And I think that's the key part. We just need to make sure that people are going to be in the situation where they don't have any information in front of them. Or if they do, very little. Don't embellish, don't turn around and start to add some extra commentary or think it's like, it's okay if we actually start to say some extra bits and pieces. People don't want that. Because if something was to really play out as a very bad scenario, someone is going to start to look at it and say, well, why did you actually say that? Because if there is a litigation or there is some sort of regulatory challenge that pops up, someone's going to say, well, you never really corrected it. Or why did you actually say that to the market? Think about what you're going to be saying and practice that.
Well, thank you, Sean.
Nice.
Thank you, Wayne. Okay. That's all we have time for today. If you enjoyed today's episode, don't forget to like and subscribe to the show. I'm your host, Carissa Breen.